أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Last week we spoke about theism versus atheism, and one of the things I mentioned in our previous session was the trend of being an atheist in today's society. Yes, we understand that in previous societies and also until today in other societies, tolerance towards difference of opinion is zero. And if someone does have a different view, a different opinion, a different outlook, a different religion, a different sect, it could lead to their death. It could lead to persecution. It could lead to discrimination. And of course, we are against all these kinds of approaches as far as a society is concerned. If you read the biography of the Imams, you realize that there was always an engaging with people of different sects and also non-religious people, atheists, where the Imam or one of the elite companions of the Imam would sit down and have a debate, a discussion with them, and of course, at the end, might agree to disagree. And I think this is what makes Islam so unique. Among the many things that we don't have this kind of mentality of, what people would usually call Bible bashing, where you try to indoctrinate people by convincing them about adopting their religion, and then also at the same time giving them a guilt trap of they're going to be eternally damned if they don't follow this particular religion or that. The Quran makes it very, very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Lakum dinukum waliyadeen. You have your religion, I have my religion. Yes, I agree, and I believe that your religion is wrong. I believe that your religion is incomplete. I believe that your sect could be distorted, could be wrong, but condemnation and things like that, that's not something that we believe in as Muslims. And that's why we very much strongly promote religious coexistence. And we're able to do that. It's very possible under the guidelines of what it is that our own religion informs of us. Unfortunately, what we can see not only is that negative portrayal of Islam in mainstream media so common, but at the same time we can see that there's also clear, obvious cases where Islam has been interpreted in such a wrong way, such a distorted way, that level of perverted understanding of Islam has, brought people to not only criticize Islam as a religion, but it's also brought them to see Islam with very, very bad eyes. Now, that would also feed to benefit the atheist who says, you see, I told you, this is what Islam says, this is what religion does to civilizations. It brings nothing other than catastrophes and destruction and things like that. And so there are a lot of challenging things when it does come to dealing with atheism. I only mentioned it in one session, but there's a lot that we need to look into as far as how real and how important it is to study atheism. Now, next week when we do study the problem of evil, we'll understand that majority of non-religious people who reject God do so based on emotional evaluation of their current situation. So it's emotional atheism. They say, I don't believe in God. How could God allow my cat to suffer? I don't believe in God. How could God take away my innocent young son or daughter? And these kind of emotional reactions to certain phenomena that we, undergo naturally in human society. Anyway, that's going to be something that we discuss next week, inshallah. But for this week's discussion, we're going to mention a few very common, very classical, very simple, I would say, very simple, straightforward arguments that exist, that have been mentioned in philosophy, in theology, in Christianity, in Islam, about the existence of God. But before doing so, there are two fundamental principles that we need to acknowledge. And if we acknowledge these two fundamental principles, then everything else will be dependent on it, and everything else will be also easy to understand as well. And that is the impossibility, the rational impossibility of what we call a dawr, or a vicious circle, a vicious cycle, and what we call tasalsul, which means an endless chain or an infinite regress. And the difference between an infinite regress and a vicious circle is the examples that you can see in front of you with the images. Which came first? The very old question that nobody is able to answer. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg or the chicken, or the chicken or the egg? Someone even made a song about that. And what happens in this situation where, well, if you say, well, the chicken came first, well, where did the chicken come from? The egg. And okay, the egg came first, but where did the egg come from? The chicken. And the chicken came first, where the egg come, and it keeps on going and going and going until an infinite regress. So rationally, you as a human being, you're not satisfied with having this kind of a dialogue with someone. You want to have a conclusion. You want to have results in your arguments, in your discussions. And so when you're demonstrating a argument, one of the things that you expect from yourself and you expect from your opponent is there being a satisfying answer, and that with that satisfying answer there will be nothing beyond it, nothing after it. You're not just going in circles, in circles, in circles, and therefore there must be an ending here. There must be a stop. Where did you come from your father? Where did your father come from his father? Where did his father come from his father? And then it goes all the way to the ape, and then before the ape, a tadpole, and then before the tadpole, a mermaid, and before a mermaid, whatever it is that they keep on saying, before that, and then before that, and then before that, there was the Big Bang, and before that, and it just you won't stop anywhere. Just keep on going. And that's why rationally, philosophically, especially in the Christian and also in the Islamic tradition of intellectual debate, it is impossible for there to be an infinite regress and that be rationally acceptable. So with the vicious circle, it's pretty much the same, but the difference with the vicious circle is that you're saying that where did A come from? It came from B. It's an ugly B. Where did A come from? It came from B. And where did B come from? It came from A. And then, okay, well, where did A come from? It came from B. And then where did B come from? It came from A. So A is dependent on B and B is dependent on A. That is called a vicious circle, or al-dawr. Dawr in Arabic means a cycle, a circle, right? As for the other example of an infinite regress, it's A came from B, which came from C, which came from D, which came from E. So you're not going backwards, you're going forwards, right? You're going forwards. And E came from D, F came from K from M, and then it just keeps on going on and on and on and on. So that's why it's called an endless chain, obviously. And so in principle, these two types of arguments won't get us anywhere. And because they won't get us anywhere, it makes absolutely no rational sense for a person to engage in a dialogue and an argument based on either an infinite regress or a vicious circle. Okay? Seeing that that's clear, here we come to argument number one, or proof number one. The first common way of proving the existence of God. And that is, we have something called a cause and something called an effect. Illa and ma'lul, or sabab and musabbab. And for every cause, there must be an effect. Where did this pen come from? Well, it came from a shop, that came from a factory, that came from plastic and ink, that came from this, that came from that, that came from this. So this is an effect and it has a cause. How did you make the dough that you have and that you're going to use to make your pizza? It came from flour and water and yeast and whatnot, and salt and combination of things. Okay, so that's the effect. This is the cause. Could be one cause, could be multiple causes that bring about it. But where did they come from? This. Where did that come from? That. And so it's not possible for an effect to come about by itself. So an effect cannot be the cause of its own thing. An effect can be a cause and also an effect, which means you are an effect of your ma'lul, you're an effect of your parents, right? And you're also a cause of your children. So it's through you that your children were produced, and you're a production of your parents. So from one angle, you can be a cause, and from another angle, you can be an effect. But for you to be from the same angle, a cause and an effect, that you are your own cause of yourself, makes absolutely no sense. So it must be something external. That something that is external, what is it? Is it nature? Let's say that it's what they call, these days, what they call Mother Nature. Okay, well, if it's Mother Nature, then what is the cause of Mother Nature? If the cause of Mother Nature is Mother Nature itself, then again, you're bringing something which is a cause, and from its very same angle, an effect and also a cause of its own. Makes no sense. If Mother Nature is an effect of another Mother Nature, then what is the cause of that other Mother Nature? And so we don't want to go into infinite regress because we already believe and agree that, that makes absolutely no sense. And so rationally, what we are going to end up with is a ultimate cause, or the final cause, or the first, what philosophers usually refer to as the first cause. And of course, in that particular sense, we are going to reach the cause of causes. We're going to reach the uncaused cause. This is what philosophers usually refer to as God. Illatul ilal, the cause of causes. And so that's why some of these things, the arguments 1, 2, 3, I just copy pasted them. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Very simple, very, very straightforward. The prime mover, or the argument of al-muharrik or al-haraka, motion or movement must be moved, and therefore, if you do have movements, this pen again, using this pen again, this is either stagnant or it's moving. If it's stagnant, then okay, but if it's moving, it's either moving by its own cause or it's moving because of something external to it. If it's moving by its own cause, then what is it that's making it move by its own cause? From within, what is it that is making? That's the law of motion, that with motion, it needs to be moved. Yes, you could be part of that movement. When you're opening a door, it's not only the handle that you're holding that's opening the door, it's also your hand that's on the handle that's allowing the door to open. And so there could also be a few things here as well. There could be gravity, it could be air, but it's something. It can't be nothing. This dominoes that are there. Where did that come into movement? How did that happen? And that's why here it says, based on the impossibility of infinite regress and a vicious circle, there should be a prime mover, yani the original mover, the main mover. You look at this universe, what's moving this universe? You always have this example where people give that, the solar system, it just being there, and someone not pushing it or someone not moving it. Makes absolutely no sense for there not to be something that is moving the world around us. Let's have a look at these two clips, and we'll carry on from there, inshallah.
Just because it says so in a holy book. How do I know the holy book is true, they say? And the answer, because God wrote it, doesn't seem to satisfy them. Ah, but what about religious experiences, say the believers? Surely they prove that God exists. Well, not necessarily. People who say they've had religious experiences could be mistaken, or making it up, or mad. Science and coincidence can often explain the rest. So where does our sense of right and wrong come from, say the believers? It must come from God. Well, again, Not necessarily. Humans could have worked it out for themselves. For example, if a man is living in a small community, it's not going to work if he steals someone's food, sleeps with someone's wife, or shoots someone's brother. And if he did, the rest of the community would have something to say about it. Probably along the lines of, don't do that, it's wrong. While the search for solid evidence goes on, there are three main arguments that try to prove from what we already know that there is, without any doubt, a God. So let's start with the cosmological argument, or first cause argument, which goes like this. God must exist because who else could have made the universe? Everything has a cause. Nothing just happens. A vase doesn't smash by itself. A ball doesn't bounce by itself. A child doesn't just suddenly appear. They all have causes. And so, the argument goes, the universe must have a cause as well, a first cause. Therefore, God exists. And what caused us? We don't have to be here, but we are. So something, or someone, must have had a reason for creating us. Or, to put it another way, the universe is big. In fact, the universe is a bigger place than it's comfortable to imagine. Each person is a tiny dot on the planet, which is an even tinier dot in the solar system, which is an even tinier dot in the galaxy, which is an even tinier dot in the universe. If we didn't exist, the cosmos wouldn't even notice. And yet, here we are. So there must be a cause. Therefore, God exists. But there are problems with this argument. It's all built on the idea that everything has a cause. So who or what caused God? And if the universe is so big, then it's highly likely that in all that space, with countless billions of planets to choose from, other life forms exist on some of them. And like our alien friends, we could be here just because we got lucky. The teleological argument, fortunately also known as the argument from design, states that because the world...
All right, I'm gonna pause it here because I haven't spoken about the teleological argument yet, but yeah. Anyway, there's a very interesting clip also that speaks about like the issue of coincidence and
Some people say that human existence is a result of a roll of the cosmic dice.
Yeah, this is also a very interesting short presentation, and I would recommend that my sisters have a look at it. There's a lot of really interesting things out there that they weren't made by Muslims. We might not agree with everything in it, but the arguments are very sound and solid, and you are able to use them in a very, very positive way. This whole issue of coincidence is an interesting topic because, you know, if you have a manuscript of, um, uh, for example, Harry Potter, a Harry Potter manuscript that's 1,000 pages, what's the possibility, what's the likelihood that if you were to throw this into the air and it come back and it all be exactly the same way as you had arranged it from the beginning, starting from 1 and ending with 1,000? You know, what's the possibility there? Very unlikely. So this argument of the prime mover is also another very interesting argument. And let's have a look. Let's read this very quickly from Wikipedia. Something can be produced if it is produced either by itself or by something else. It can't be from nothing because nothing causes nothing. It can't be by itself because an effect never causes its own self. And therefore it needs to be by something else. Let's say, for argument's sake, A. If A is the first, then we have reached the conclusion because it's the prime cause, it's the cause of causes. If it's not A, then we go to number 2. from number 3, which means it is produced either by itself or by something else. And then from 3 and 4, we produce another B. And then the ascending series that keeps on going up and up, it's either infinite or finite. It's either going to continue on an endless chain or it's going to stop. You can't allow it to continue on and be an endless chain, so therefore it needs to stop. And that prime cause in our argument is going to be Almighty God. All right, so here we ask, okay, we understand that, but who moves God? And if we believe that God made everything, who made God? Because everything needs to be created, but who made God? Again, although these are very, very common questions, but if we've stuck to the law of dawr and tasalsul, of rejecting and not accepting an infinite regress or a vicious circle, then these questions by default wouldn't have any meaning. And that's why the common division of types of existence is also going to serve very well for us. And this is one of the things that Islamic philosophers have mentioned and emphasized on improving God's existence. And that is, you've got different kinds of existence. You've got something that can't exist altogether, an ocean of Coca-Cola, a mountain of gold, those might exist in some other world, but these examples that I wrote, a flat mountain or a round square, for example, impossible. They can't exist. And that's why they're impossible existence. Then you have something that does exist, but it doesn't have to exist. The world will still function with or without it. And that means it's a possible existence. It's a contingent existence. Mumkin al-wujud, like me, the human being. Whether I exist or whether I don't exist, nothing's going to change in the world, right? Whether this tree exists or whether it doesn't exist, nothing's going to change. So it's a contingent existence. And everything in creation is a contingent existent, because there's only one necessary existence. There's only one thing that needs to exist by necessity, and that is that which brought about existence. What brings existence into being is the necessary existence, and everything other than the necessary existence is contingent, is mumkin, is possible, because it won't affect anything else in the greater scheme of existence. Now, of course, this is how you're able to look at it in this particular way. Sorry, not Burkan. Burkan means volcano. Burhan means argument. The Burhan, the argument of contingency and existence, which is also called the cosmological argument, or another angle of the cosmological argument. Cosmological comes from the word cosmos, which means the world, which means the universe, which means creation. So everyone's read this. Again, that's the third argument for demonstrating God's existence. Another one is Burhan al-Huduth, the argument of the bringing about of existence, the coming into existence. So this Burhan al-Huduth is that okay, you now exist. You came into being. How did that happen? How did your origination happen? You're certain as a human being that you didn't create yourself. You're also certain that the person in front of you didn't create you. You're certain that the person in front of you didn't create himself or herself as well. And therefore, you know that something else must have created you. So you start your journey and you're looking and you're searching and you say, well, let me ask my parents. My parents say their parents, let me ask their parents. And then, you know, that intriguing question that you want to get a satisfactory answer to, you know, will initiate that whole discovery of the necessary existence or the necessary being or the prime cause or the cause of causes or the first cause. Number 5, as we said, the teleological argument or the argument of design. You know, that a clock, you know, you look at the clock, you look at the hundreds, literally hundreds of pieces that exist in a mechanical clock. How did that come about? It can't, um, it, of course, it can't have brought itself into functioning in that particular way. And therefore, this watch must have what they call a watchmaker. You know, this is again another common theological argument proving God's existence, the watchmaker or the architect, you know, that there is a designer for this world. What does al-nazm mean? Here I wrote Burhan al-nazm. What does nazm in Arabic mean? Organized, right? Everything is in order, everything is organized. I don't need to go into this science information about if the world was a little bit closer to the sun, everything would burn. If the world was a little bit, by inches maybe, further away from the sun, we would all freeze to death. You know, what's happening here? You know, this lunar cycle, summertime, wintertime, day, night, all these things, you know, everything is so much in order and it's so perfect in its cohesion. You know, nothing's happening, and all these thousands of years, the planets and the solar system and all these things are functioning in such a beautiful order and also beautifully designed as well. Look at your face, look at your body, that there is a kind of, you know, again, cohesion here that you can see, as far as not only as far as functionality is concerned, but as far as how you look, you know, with your eyes, the way your nose is positioned, where your ears are positioned, you know, the neck, the hands, and how your hands move, and how your back moves, and all these things. Subhanallah, look in the Quran. And why is there on more than one occasion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Almighty God, you know, reminds us of the creation of something as simple as an insect or something as complex as a camel. You know, you look at the camel and you think, oh, well, it's just a normal animal. But even the Quran says that, why don't you ponder and look into how a camel has been created? You know, again, you know, I don't know much about the camel, but if you just look at the Quranic explanations as to why a camel has been mentioned in this particular way in the Quran, you will be surprised. You know how its eyelashes, a camel's eyelashes are very beautiful. You know, very long and very, but it's not for beauty. The eyelashes are for the sand in the desert, its storage of water, how it's packed as far as its legs are concerned, its neck is concerned, and everything else with the camel's, you know, creation and physiology. Subhanallah, it's beautiful, really, and you can't not, you know, overlook this and say, oh well, it all came coincidentally, it all came about coincidentally, and you know, it was just formed in that particular way, and uh, Mother Nature. Other people will just say Mother Nature. They're too scared to use the word God. You know, God created. They just say, okay, well, it's Mother Nature. If you were to ask anyone, what does Mother Nature mean? No one will give you a satisfying answer. No one knows what Mother Nature is, you know. Even the pagans who believe that everything came from nature and everything is nature, won't give you a, you know, legit answer to all of this. And so, you know, with the watch that you look at, there must be a watchmaker. With, you know, the building that you are living in, there must be an architect, there must be a designer. And this is the universe that you live in. There must be an orderer, or organizer, a nazim, who is managing this world. Number 6, the argument of fitrah. And this is a very spiritual, kind of mystical way of looking at God's existence. And there are many expressions that we have, that we are able to see in the supplications, in the prayers of our imams, peace be upon them. You know, like Bismillah, like when the imam says, Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bi dhatih. Imam Ali alayhi salam in Dua al-Sabah, Ya man dalla ala dhatihi bi dhatih. Oh, he who indicates towards himself through himself, you know. And you just need to look within yourself and you'll be able to find God. You don't need to go around and ponder on the universe or the solar system or anything else. You just look within yourself, within your own inner instincts, your fitrah, as we say, your nature, your inner nature. You know, the argument of nature, which means the argument of your inner primordial nature. And you can see that, you know, there's really nothing other than God, this supreme being, that will be able to cover all of and cater to all of your needs, your moral needs, your spiritual needs, your mental needs. And that's why in this particular spiritual, mystical understanding of proving God's existence, it's all about mental peace. It's all about harmony and tranquility, spiritual tranquility, that I know that with my assurance that there is a purpose in life, that there is a God, there is a supreme being, and this God is taking care of me. And how could I have come into existence out of nowhere? And all these other things, you know, through my own self, you know, I'm able to understand the world. And that's what they call in mysticism the microcosm and the macrocosm. العالم الصغير العالم الكبير. أتحسب أنك جرم صغير وفيك انطوى العالم الأكبر. You think that you are some very small, insignificant entity, but within you the whole world exists. Within your microcosmic being, you're able to discover the macro world around you. But it all is based on your recognition of yourself, and also staying away from satanic whispering or external influence or emotional judgment or incorrect information, and all of these other things. I tried to be as quick as possible. Each one of these, can be further developed, but I'm just giving my sisters keynotes to some arguments that we are able to use as far as demonstrating God's existence and proving the existence of God. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.